All right, welcome to Spilling the Tea in Studio D. Darren Beckwith, director here at Dawson Co-op, one of your hosts, along with
Candace Bennett, assistant director, teacher center coordinator.
And we are proud to have with us on this episode, Ms. Taryn Echols. And I don't want to give your title because I know I'll mess it up. I know you've got a name tag right there. So what is your official title?
Assistant Superintendent, Hot Springs School District.
Okay. And you've been in Hot Springs how long?
Oh, see, I knew you were going to ask me something that I had to think about. I think this is my 9th year. I think.
That's awesome.
And you've been, what, like 14 years all total,
Yes,
I think.
this is my 14th year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's a lot younger than you, Darren.
A lot younger. Most folks are these days.
Yes.
But,
A good thing.
can you believe this? Candace and I student taught together. That's the truth.
Yeah, that is totally
Wow.
true.
And look how much younger I look than she does. Right.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's the truth. So, and but let's take it way back. So, educationally speaking, you grew up Delta Wise, Helena, West Helena area,
Yeah,
right?
I did.
So, let's talk about, to get this thing rolling a little bit, about what your education was like, and then what led you into education. How about that?
I actually had a pretty exceptional educational experience. Helena is a small town. My dad moved there right when he got out of college. So, like, I remember him telling me his first teaching contract was like $5,000.
Oh, wow.
He showed it to me, like he kept it. So he was 9th grade physical science teacher at Central High School for 30 years.
Oh,
Wow.
And then my freshman year, he became the high school counselor.
Okay.
So he was one of my counselors. My mom actually worked at the high school. She taught a reading class for a while. But then she moved over to Phillips Community College, and she became the dean of adult education there. So I grew up around educators, and, you know, when you work within a district, your kids kind of are like, they can't get away with anything.
Right.
But you know that people are going to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I really was blessed and had a great just educational experience there. I had great teachers. I'm an only child, so you know, my mom dropped me off at school every day. My dad picked me up at school from school every day. It was just a great experience for me. Education was not what I wanted to go into at all. When I graduated with 186 in our class, and I actually was the salutatorian
Wow.
of my
That's
senior
awesome.
class. And everything that you could do in Helena, I did. So my parents had me in dance class. They had me in this little club down there called the Federated Club. And it was opportunities for kids to compete in dance and piano and speaking and several different opportunities. So they had me in every single thing that you could possibly do. Part-time, my dad worked at the college in the fitness center.
Oh, wow.
So he kind of ran the fitness center in the afternoon. So I spent a lot of my time up there with him
Right.
in the fitness center. And then I would go to dance class and do that. So when I graduated, you know, I had my heart set on going to UCA, made it into the honors college, was all good to go, but I was going to be short about probably $1,500 a semester. And UAPB offered me a full ride.
Wow.
So I ended up going to UAPB, 4 years there, got a degree in biology. And then I moved to Texas and thought I wanted to be a pharmaceutical sales rep. And got out there and started doing some job fairs, and they were like, you need direct sales experience. I'm like, cool, I could do that. Good, I can do that. Well, the only place that would hire me was this little copier place that sold copiers. So I was like, yes, I'm going to do that. So here I am with a cubicle and a list, trying to make cold calls.
Right.
21 years old, having to go out to these big high-rise places, trying to ask people that they want to buy a copier, and I cried every day for about 3 months. And so about 3.5 months into it, the CEO called me in, and he was like, hey, you know, where's that girl we saw at the beginning, like at the interview stage? And I said, she's not here. I couldn't do it anymore, so I quit. And so at this point, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what to do. My mom is like, you need to find a job. I told you, here comes I told you.
Right.
I told you needed to go into education. I told you. And I said, well, out here you could do alternative certification. So I ended up finding a job at a oral surgeon's office. And I was a surgical tech. Loved it. Loved it. Like, worked my way up to working with the doctor where I was his first assistant on surgeries. That office that we worked at actually worked with a dentist's office that did all the Dallas Cowboys teeth.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
We would get all the rookies to come
Right.
in.
Oh, yeah.
And we would have to come in early, like at 6, to do like their extractions, or if they were doing a dental implant or something like that. So it was really, really fun. But I knew I couldn't make that like my career path. So
Who was the most famous cowboy you remember?
none of the famous ones came in there.
Okay.
No, no, no. Now, they told me stories about, Jerry
Yeah,
Jones
I
coming
got
in
you.
and stuff like that, but
Okay.
they never came while I was there.
Gotcha.
That's
I
a
did
cool
mess up one
experience.
time, and I wrote this lady the wrong prescription. And I got in so much trouble. I remember the doctor calling me in. I mean, he just yelled at me, "You cannot do that." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." So he was like, "You can't write prescriptions anymore." Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Sorry. But he got over it because he liked me. But I started taking classes in Texas. And so I ended up getting my alternative certification, finished up in like 6 months.
Wow.
So the next summer, my friend who I started off in college with, she actually moved back to Texas, and so we reconnected. She actually went through a teacher preparation program, so we both start going out to job fairs. And in Texas, it's, massive. Like, you go to all these schools, they have all these tables set up, and you have to get through the first round just by saying, "Hey, here's my resume. Do you like me?"
Right.
Yeah.
So I had done like 3 job fairs, and every last one of them, I would get to the second interview, and they would say, "So tell me about your teacher preparation program." And I said, "Oh, I did. I teach Texas. It was an alternative certification program." And they were like, "Great. Thank you so much." And then never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So got to a job fair at Carrollton Farmers Branch. Got to the table, and I'm talking to one of the people there, really, I'm like, I gotta find a job today. I have to. So I'm really talking, and this guy comes over, and he was like, "Did I hear you say you're from Arkansas?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He said, "What part of Arkansas?" I said, "Helena, West Helena." He said, "Shut your mouth." He said, "Come with me." So he took me over to another table, and he took me around like where the back was. And so principal was sitting there, 2 assistant principals, and a counselor. And so he took me to one of the assistant principals, and he was like, "This is my wife, Karen." He said, "Karen, this young lady says she's from Helena." And so she turned around. She was like, "Oh, you Charles's daughter, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." Well, it was Karen and Nick Lasker. I don't know if you know Nick
I do.
Lasker.
I
Okay,
do.
so it's Karen and
Wow.
Nick Lasker. Karen's dad was my high school principal,
Oh, wow.
and her
wow.
mom was my librarian in elementary school.
Wow.
So Karen was like, "Give me your stuff. I'll get you an interview. Don't worry about it."
Hmm.
Came in for the interview, and at this time I'm still, I think, 22 maybe, young, like just trying to figure it out. Go in for the interview. Everything checks out. Principal calls. She hires me, but she calls me in like the first day and was like, "I really didn't want to hire you. You're too young.
Yeah.
You're too green. It's just not gonna work." But Karen said that she was gonna take care of you. I said, "Yes, ma'am. I can." So that's where I started, and I taught 7th grade science there. And Rodney and I, when they hired me, we weren't engaged. We got engaged that summer, and he was like, "I'm not moving to Texas. Do you know what they do to coaches out there? Like, I'm not doing that." So I had to move. And ironically, when I had to go and tell the principal, at the end of the year that I was leaving, like, she was upset. She said, "You told me you weren't going to stay." And she said, "I had my doubts about you, but you have done an amazing job." So I ended up getting a job at Watson Chapel teaching 8th grade science. Rodney was an assistant coach there with Danny Myatt, who was the head coach at the time, and that kind of is the rest of it.
That's just so cool. Just like a God thing, You're
I
right
really do
place,
think
right
I
time.
do think it was a God thing, especially when I look back on my career. I watched my parents, and I don't know if you know much about Rodney's parents. His parents were educators too. His dad's
know
a former superintendent,
Okay.
former athletic director. He worked in maintenance and transportation, and they moved around a lot
Right.
for jobs because
Right.
at the time that they were our age, there weren't many African Americans in those roles.
Right.
His mom, Rodney's dad, was the superintendent in West Helena School District when I was in 8th grade.
Wow.
So that's when I
Oh.
met him.
Okay.
Was in 8th grade, and we started like dating. I guess you could say like 11th grade.
Right.
But his mom was the federal programs coordinator in West Helena for a long time.
Yeah.
But I guess it kind of is a God thing because even with him, he was the assistant coach at Watson Chapel for 4 years, I guess, before Danny left and went to Greenbrier. But he didn't get the head job when the job came open. He didn't get it. Like he interviewed for it. Our son was like 2 months old at the time. He interviewed for it, didn't get it, which was fine. I mean, it was hard for me to see him so disappointed that year because he loved the sport. And so we actually, the next year, this job was coming open at Hot Springs, the basketball job. And I was interested in being an administrator. And, that was the deal we made for me to come back. I said, we got to go back to school. This is what we're going to have to do. And Harding really worked with us because that was only going into our 2nd year.
Right.
And really, you really needed to have 2 years before you could start the program.
Sure. Right.
So they let us in that year. But when he didn't get that job, he stayed as an assistant for the next year. But he found out about the Hot Springs job, ended up coming to interview. And so he called on the way home, and he was like, "Yeah, I think it went well." I'm like, "Okay, great, come on home." I'm like, "Yeah." Well, about an hour or so later, he called back, and he was like, "They called and offered me the job," and I was like, "What?" So because since I'm an only child, my parents had moved. Like they both retired. They moved, bought a house in Whitehall, about half a mile away from where we live.
Right.
So they were ready to be there. And so he took that job and. He was like, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know what we need to do." So he actually, we sold our house, moved in with my parents who had bought a house in Whitehall. In between that time, the assistant principal job at my school came open. I applied for it. I ended up getting that. So we lived apart for a year. He stayed here in Hot Springs. We're in Arkadelphia now, but he stayed in Hot Springs. I stayed at Watson Chapel.
Right.
And that was just kind of it. And so the next year, I applied everywhere. I said, I don't care where I go, but we cannot do this for another year.
Yeah.
Right.
So the rest is kind of history.
So family functions are fun because it's all probably talking shop the whole time, all the educators.
Yes, well, especially with his dad. Like his dad wants to talk all the things.
Right.
Because, he was former superintendent. So he's like, "Okay, Taryn, tell me about this."
Yeah.
Tell me about this. And with the athletic director, it makes for great conversation with him and Rodney because he knows. Like he did it. So when Rodney's like, "Oh yeah, I had this happen," he's like, "Well, son, now you need to do this." It's always so interesting to hear him talk about that.
Well, there's a lot of things you said that kind of parallel my story in lots of ways, but even down to the point of you being an only child. My wife and I, we have one son. She took him to school. He rode home with me. Those kinds of things. But he was immersed in. He's not an educator. He's an engineer, but. Like you were saying, being immersed in it like he was.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about that I loved so much about that, when they do get out of school and as an administrator, you're putting in those longer hours, there's no safer place for a kid.
No.
Getting to run around and do the things that they did. And then at the end of the day, I'm kind of like you. My first degree, radio television, but when I decided to go full-blown back to school, start working toward education, I got in sales.
Yeah.
But, of all the things that I've done in my life, I'm like you, not a salesman.
Oh, no.
I'd walk in there, and you think selling a copier is not, or is hard to do. Try selling a radio spot. That's just nothing. It's air. They'd be like, "I don't think so," and I'd go, "Okay."
Right. Thank you so much.
Exactly. But, the thing about education and just like you're saying with your parents, Rodney's parents being in it, it is kind of cool though to even talk about how things have progressed through the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And with that being said, the progressive piece, that's something I wanted to talk to you for sure today about, is just the fact that you are so innovative, so much so that, well, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit, but so much so that you actually won yourself kind of a big deal award. This summer.
Oh,
Let's talk
well,
about that.
I mean, I guess one thing you don't know about me, and maybe you have figured this out about me, I don't know, but I am I just like to work.
Right.
And my humility comes from watching my parents do what they
Sure.
did day in and day out. You know, when I got the nomination for that award, I'm like, this is my second year in this job. What in the world? But yes, I'll go ahead and apply. And
But first of all, let's talk about the award.
Okay.
So it was the
Trying to avoid it.
well, but it was the administrator. The official title, what was it? It was
Asia Administrator
of the Year.
Yes.
So, and that's a big deal
Awesome.
for those listening out there. That's the
Well deserving,
yeah,
by
it's
the way.
the Arkansas Administrators Association Administrator of the Year for Asia, which is
curriculum and
curriculum.
instruction.
yeah, curriculum and instruction. So out of the entire state of Arkansas, it was you, girl.
It was.
Mhm.
It was.
I said well deserving. It
Oh,
surely
well,
was.
I appreciate that.
And one thing I will say, Taryn is like so great to share. She really does. She just, I think, just has that heart for kids and wants to help everybody.
I do. And I guess that kind of goes back to growing up in Helena. I mean, if you know where Helena is, there's nothing down there.
Right.
Like, nothing.
Right.
So for me, I told you in the beginning, I did have a great educational experience. I mean, I really did.
Right.
Like, it prepared me for life outside of Helena. So I do want that for all kids. And I've been in Helena, and then I was at Pine Bluff, and then now I'm at Hot Springs. And we do have several socioeconomic types in Hot Springs, but
Right.
to me, that doesn't define who our kids are.
Right.
So that's what I try to communicate all the time. It was interesting when I was writing the application, you know, you had to write it in a way where you kind of told what you were doing. But even when the paper came to interview me, one of the things I told them is this really wasn't for me.
Right.
This was the work that we're doing within the district. So
Sure.
I really wanted to
That's
put
awesome.
on display
Right.
what we were doing in our district, just to improve the quality of education that our students receive, because I think that's so important. You all will recognize this. When I first moved to Hot Springs, I did not realize the dynamics of the school districts
Right.
and how the community perception is so vastly different, especially with the large three. It was an eye opener for me, for sure.
Right.
So to gain the recognition for doing that work within Hot Springs School District, oftentimes people don't necessarily say, "Oh man, they have great educational things going on." Well, we do. Like,
Right. Oh,
our
yeah,
teachers
for
work
sure.
really hard. Our administrators work really hard. We really try to connect with our families and meet them where they are,
Right.
Right.
and provide our kids with, experiences.
Sure.
Because often you will hear people, especially kids, you'll hear them say, "Oh, I haven't been to Little Rock before." What? What do you mean you haven't gone
Right.
to Little Rock?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's more to life than just Hot Springs. So it was a very humbling experience. I really wasn't. I mean, I don't know. I don't like to talk about myself in that regard. So
Right.
it was a great experience, and I learned something from people all the time.
Well, I mean, I was there, at the conference. Now, I go and tell you, I wasn't there at 7:30. I wasn't driving in. I mean, I love you, girl, but I wasn't gonna get up at no 7:30 once you get a piece of wood. You know what I'm saying? But I was at the session that you presented, and it was very evident that it was a team thing, because I mean, when you were presenting, the group that was with you, again, they were still very ecstatic at the fact that you won it, but also and the fact that you were giving props to the team there.
Right.
And it, I mean, it was genuine. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. And it does. Honestly, it takes a team to accomplish those things.
It does.
Born and raised in Garland County, you're right. I understand that dynamic. Myself, a Cutter Morning Star graduate. Dad graduated from Fountain Lake. Mom, Trojan. So I get all that stuff. But I will say this. within probably, the last 5 to 10 years, Hot Springs, I think the thing that I've really come to notice is exactly what you said, is the approach that you all really have gotten to the point where you guys are educating all kids
Yes.
at all levels.
Yes.
And we talk about that a lot. That's one of the toughest things to do in education today, is making sure you meet kids where they are,
Right.
and make sure you're giving every kid every opportunity. And sometimes I think folks don't realize how tough that can get.
It is. It's very challenging.
Because, especially those kids that get dropped off, at school, dropped off at home, and we don't know what they're doing after
No.
we've dropped them off back home,
No.
what kind of support they have. So we've got to give them all we can while we got them.
And I just going back to some of the stuff you said, kids need somebody to believe in them. My parents, they're two of the hardest working people I know. My mom, Darren knows, retired from Walmart after 42 years. And I just remember my sister and I growing up, and not that there's anything wrong with Walmart, because she has a fantastic retirement, but my dad was a carpenter, so he worked part-time, and he's still working. He's 74, has his cows, still works part-time, but we watched them struggle. I mean, we had love in our home, and we had them pushing us, especially my mother and my dad, but they were just like, we expect both of you to get your education, and just pushed us. And you just think about kids that just don't have that. So whenever I was teacher, principal, I wanted to be that for those kids, and that didn't have that maybe at home, and say, you can do this. I believe in you. Because we did have that at home, and we both, my sister's a CPA. She's, way up there in Arkansas Electric Cooperative, and, we don't have to struggle.
No.
I mean, no, we're not, by all means, we are not, super rich. We
No.
have what we need. God gives us what we need.
Yeah.
We're able to help others, but we watched our parents struggle, but that's what I want and I know you guys, your hearts too, is I just feel like if we could do that for all kids, and just have that person that thinks that, we believe in you, you can do it. I just think that.
I think some of what we have done over the last 5 years was really strengthen the work of the professional learning community. And that really does promote learning for all, despite what quote unquote label they have, or despite, where they are coming from. We really have put a focus in on providing support to our principals and our teachers on the collaborative team approach with professional learning communities. But the challenge, though, is helping our teachers understand that Teachers Pay Teacher is not curriculum.
Right.
It's
Right.
not. So
Right.
it's cool and it's cute,
Right.
but it's not curriculum.
Right.
It's not research and evidence-based. It's not going to move kids, and it's not going to provide them with what they need when they get out of school. So that becomes a challenge. I think in my role now, I felt like I had more control over that when I was the building principal.
Right.
And now it's to kind of coaching my principals and assistant principals to coach their teachers through that. So now I feel like I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
I'm the district.
But
now.
what I do love is that, even like in the district level, that you guys have these expectations for your principals, and the principals have expectations for teachers, but you always are like, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not going to do myself,
or that I haven't done already.
Right. Yeah. And just like our conversation earlier today about, affirmations, and you're giving affirmations to principals, but you're expecting principals to give affirmations to teachers give affirmations to students.
Yes.
So
Well, and I found it too, sometimes even as superintendent, though, you get to the point, and there's so much other stuff, and it pulls you away from that inspection piece. I mean, that the expectation is only as strong as the inspection piece, right?
Yes.
And that's where it takes that commitment to be able to say, hey, all this other stuff that really is low level, low lying fruit, low hanging fruit, whatever. I mean, you got to be able to push that down and get back to say, hey, what is our priority?
Yes.
And really focus on that. And it can be tough.
It is. It is. And, my priority has always been teaching and learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not worried about everything else. I want you to make sure your teachers are teaching and your students are learning.
Right.
What evidence do you have to support that?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think sometimes that's the frustration. And I love all of the principals and assistant principals that we have. We were principal colleagues before. Some of them were assistant principals with me before, and they're principals now. So for the most part, we all have a really good relationship. And they call me on a personal level, like, Taryn, what can I do to support this? Or how can I work on doing this? Not necessarily on a professional level, but just help coach me through some of these things.
Right.
But I think sometimes they're like, are you going to ever not ask us where's the evidence? Like, no, I'm always going to ask you that, because that tells me that you have the right work at the forefront and not, like you said, all of the other things.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey Canada in Harlem there, he's an incredible guy, and they call their schools the Dream Academies. And the more I process that, I think, he's right. Every kid, should have that opportunity. They have the ability for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions. We get that. I mean, some kids, they have those social, emotional, physical challenges.
Right.
We know that. But for the most part, even those kids, we can still push them along the way. And I think sometimes, we still have a few people that write them off before they even step foot on campus.
Yes. We have a Solution Tree associate that has been working with us probably for the last 2.5 years. His name is Joe Kademi. And he always puts it this way: 95% of the students that are in your building are going to be independent adults. So if 95% of them are going to be independent adults one day, how are we going to ensure that they are prepared to do a job, be a good citizen, and provide a service?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
How can we do that?
Right.
So it puts it into perspective a little bit more than just, I have 5 kids in my class that are below. No, that's not what he's talking about.
Right.
I don't care if they below right now or not.
Right.
They still have to go out into the real world and get a job and work and be productive to live.
Well, and in the conversation too, we did some conversion charter work at our place, and one of the places we were going to go at the high school. Then we thought, well, we can't just jump right in. We've really got to back this thing up to the middle school. And so we started out with the we call it PSP, the personalized success plan. And then, and we had a couple, we'll call them experienced teachers, go, well, why would you want to start there? They're going to change their mind. And I was like, well, so what? I mean, but they've got to start somewhere, and we had somebody from DESE come in one day and look at that, and they said, that's interesting. Said, I had this discussion with my nephew last week. He was all wrapped up. He wanted to be a gamer until he found out he had to take statistics and some other course that he has no desire to take. So guess what? He's changed the path that he wants to go. And I said, that's exactly right. If they change it 85 times, we don't care, as long as they are looking at a path like he's telling us to. But, to me, it's all about encouraging those kids. And honestly, we have to be real with them from time to time. But at least we need to get them on a path. And to Candace's point earlier, we got to encourage these kids.
Right.
Let them know we believe in them.
Right.
And that they're going to make mistakes along the way. That is a normal. And I mean, I have to remind Rodney of that with our 10-year-old. It's very interesting to watch him coach his son.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Did you have 2 children?
I do. I have a 10-year-old. He is in 5th grade. Now we're dealing with the whole, he's the youngest one in the class. We should have redshirted him in kindergarten, That's what we're getting now. And then my 5-year-old is just kind of like a spitfire. She is, the way I kind of describe it is, probably until about 21, I was very meek, mild, cried all the time, everything, non-confrontational, just to myself. I don't want you to say you don't like me. I don't want you to say things wrong. Like, leave me alone. About 21, that all changed. And so she is me right now.
At 21.
At 21.
She is a spitfire.
I was like you, super quiet.
Just like, she's going to tell you how she feels. She's not afraid of anything. She can command a room, and she is compassionate and kind-hearted. My son is me growing up. Very, very meek. Very, very quiet. if he sees you, he'll look at you, but he's not gonna speak to you.
Right.
But he athletically, he really has a little gift.
Right.
But it's interesting watching Rodney parent and coach him
Oh, wow.
because I have to remind him sometimes he's 10.
Well, you know, and again, I can relate. I mean, this is, son was 5 years old, and, I never was a head coach, but started out teacher and coach, but we were playing, I guess it was when they got to pitching league, or pitching machine league or whatever. But anyway, I was giving him the old speech on the way home. I'm like, man, you got to turn it up. You got to get, and
Got to be aggressive.
That's right, exactly. And I look over there, and he's in the passenger seat with his juice box and his goldfish and his Kool-Aid mustache, and he says, Dad, it's just a game. And I was like, you know what? That's right. He's 5 or 6, whatever it was. I said, you're right. It's just a game. At this point, you'll have time to, And my wife, same thing when I got home. She said, yep, you better learn that lesson.
Yeah. Well, as parents that are educators, we really are trying to parent our kids in a way where they are going to be ready for life outside of my house. And parenting an African-American son has been a real tug on my mama heart, especially over the last couple of years, because we don't raise him in a way where he sees, negatives of anything. Like, we want to raise him holistically to believe in the good in people and to believe that you can do anything and you can go after everything. But in reality, he's getting to the point now where I'm having to tell him, nobody's going to give you anything.
Right.
You have to be willing to work for it. So you can't just go out there and play, or you can't just take this test and say, oh, okay, I know I'm going to do well on it anyways. Like, you have to start putting forth some effort. But it is, it's interesting. It's an interesting challenge being an educator and being a parent, especially of kids that are 10 and 5, just because I do want them to see. I want them to see the good and the bad in the world, because I don't want them to be shocked and not be able to function when they leave my house. I want them to be able to function and still, know I'm going to make a mistake. If I make a mistake, this is what I need to do when I do that. So I kind of parent my kids like I did when I was principal, even at the high school and at the elementary. Like, they all were my kids.
And I think that was the best thing about the truck ride home. That was our sacred time. He could ask anything, and even from a small age, nothing was off the table, and so that was a good time for us. And of course, like you're saying, you prepare them, for life, leave home, but it can backfire on you, because my son got married after his sophomore year in college. I was like, but it was good. It's worked out great. They've both graduated in May, engineers. Got great jobs, just bought a house.
Great.
And so got off the insurance.
Listen, and I have an only also. So she's, in college this year, but she is completely opposite from me. So I've got that type A personality, and she's laid back like her dad, which I'm like, I really kind of wish I was a little more like that on that side. But it was hard growing up because I'm so competitive and just tried to push, and finally one day it just hit me. It's like, this is not her. She's not me. And so backed off, and of course, hopefully instilled some good qualities in her. She's a worker. I mean, she's worked through high school. She's working now, going to school. So she's a great kid, but parenting is a challenge, because you just
I apologize to Ethan every day. I'm just sorry. You have 2 parents who really are the same. And, we decided, I guess it was the first year of him really playing travel baseball, because he never wanted to play ever.
Right.
So he didn't start playing until 2 years ago. Well, I think I heard myself on a video, and I was like, I can't do this. So I told Rodney, I said, I am going to be the encourager. You're coaching. You're in the thing. So you do all that. I am just going to be, you did great. I love the way you got up there and didn't cry when you struck out.
That's right.
I love watching you play. Yep.
Yes.
That's it. Yep. Yep.
And so he'll get in the car, Mom, but this is how he is, though. Have a great game, do a great job pitching, and he'll get in the car and say, Mom, how did I do today? And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Like, you know how you did, but
Right.
you did great, son. And I have to tell myself, nope, you
Yep.
did great, son. You did so good.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's awesome. I mean, but you reflected on that, and so
Yes,
yeah.
I did. Unfortunately for our kids, they just have two very competitive parents.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that we don't mind putting in hard work. We don't mind putting in long hours. We don't mind doing whatever it takes. And we kind of parent that same way. So I just tell them, I'm sorry in advance.
I've had to say I'm sorry some
Oh, yeah.
to Sarah quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. But and here's the thing. Like I said, we've been blessed, very blessed
Absolutely.
with a great son, great daughter-in-law, but the thing that still kind of gets me, people come up and say, man, you guys are so lucky
Yes.
with your kids, and I'm thinking, luck. I'm like,
You're like hard work, yeah,
we,
and a lot of prayer.
yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And there is probably some luck at times, but the thing is just it kind of goes along with that, being in the school business, choosing a name. I like that. No, I can't do that because this kid did that. Oh, no, I can't do that. That kid did this. But by being immersed in it, I mean, I think you take the best of what you have to give and see the worst in some have received, I guess is the best way to see it, and try to find, where those two collide and give that to your own. And at least that's what worked for us. And, my wife works in central office at Lakeside, so, a lot of times when people come to that point, they're not there to say, hey, great job today.
No.
So, but it's at the end of the day, it's worked out for us. And so it's, it's tough, sometimes on those kids.
It is. And and we recognize that. And, but the biggest thing that I want them to see from us, as they are growing up, is what we both saw in our parents, is just the sacrifice and the willingness to work hard. And that's the hard part about people who say, man, you're so lucky. How did you get that job? And oh my gosh, how long have you been in education? And you're already doing this?
Yeah.
But they don't see the sacrifice and the work or the experiences. I remember when I first started my educational leadership classes, people were like, well, in order for you to be an assistant principal, you got to have this many years, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And I was like, why? Like, where's that written at? Why do I have to do that?
Right.
Like, I just want to make my work ethic be known so that I can show that I was prepared for this role. But both Rodney and I both have been told no several times. Like, we've gone for jobs and didn't get them, or, had to wait and, still participate and do things that we really didn't want to do.
Exactly.
But we did it anyways just to gain the experience. So a lot of people don't want to do that part.
Right.
They want to get out of school, go straight to a position, and then not realize how much work it takes to be actually great at it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I told Darren, even in this position now, you just see it kind of come full circle that I've, teacher, curriculum coordinator, assistant principal, because I never thought I would be in 5 different school districts.
Right.
But in this position, being in those school districts, people, and it's just God works how it's supposed to. I mean, God works in His ways, and everything works out how it's supposed to.
Well, yeah, and too, I've always been kind of that same way too. When people say, you're like, because I, taught and coached for 4 years, got an admin, but. I tell people, you guys have had the same opportunities.
Yes.
You guys have had the same chances, like you're saying, to get knocked down and told no, like I have. But if you really want, people telling me, you can't do that. I mean, that really throws gas on my fire.
Yeah.
And I really kick it up into the next gear and probably say,
Yes.
Watch.
I think I will say I never envisioned being high school principal.
Right.
That's shout out to Dr. Mike Hernandez, because he was kind of the nudger on that one. But I was like, no, I'm good. I'm gonna stay right here in elementary.
Right. Yeah.
But if it weren't for people like him, who are, I look to him as an innovator. Like, he is so smart and knows a lot, but he can pick people out for their strengths and talents, and he can refine them. So
That was Darren Beckler for sure, too.
I appreciate him for seeing that in me when I didn't see it in myself.
Yep.
And even in the role that I'm in right now, you know, there are several people across the state that I still connect with because I want to be able to learn from them.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's a secret. Everybody knows that I have greater aspirations.
Sure.
But I'm not the type of person who's like, it's time for me to do that right now.
Right.
I know that I still have opportunity, and we're in a good spot where my kids are happy. My husband is happy.
Right.
So that's major. He is happy as a clam.
Well, and what I say to this is, I mean, you know, you keep your head down, work hard, opportunity's going to come.
Yeah.
Good Lord's going to bust that door wide open.
Yeah.
And that's what it's always been for me.
Yeah.
And you say that about Mike. He was working for me at Fountain Lake when he got his first principal's job. And it's the same kind of, he came to me and he said, well, you know, there's some people got a little doubt. And I said, so? Yeah, I said, again, I back up, you know, 4 years, and I had an opportunity.
I did 4 in the classroom.
And I said, here's what I'll tell you. The worst thing that was going to happen to me, they were going to tell me you didn't get the job.
Correct.
You know, and I said, it wasn't like I hated what I was doing.
Correct.
You know, so, and I said, you know, so don't ever let that be any kind of deterrent for you. And, but yeah, he's progressive, and I mean, I've always, you know, he's got such an interesting story.
He
I mean,
does.
you know, teaching in New Orleans, and I mean, and just to watch him rise has been an incredible story within itself. And, but those are the kinds of people along the way that you're glad that you bump into and you spend a little time with, like you're saying.
Definitely.
Yes.
So it's been you know, that's the thing about education too. I think it are the folks that you do meet along the way, willing to help and you know. Do what they can to make everybody better.
Yeah.
And that, I think you'll find that Garland County, and well, I say Garland County, everybody in the Dawson area, really. You know, I was sitting there thinking, you know, we had our board meeting yesterday, just looking across the room and how long I've known the majority of those soups, and every one of them, I feel like I could pick up the phone tomorrow if I needed something, you know, or if one of those soups needed something from another soup. I mean, I think about how they have been at a ball game or something as minor as this sounds, you know, bus breaks down. They'll call the soup and they'll say, hey, can we borrow a bus? Sure thing, man. We'll have it there in 5 minutes. Those kinds of things.
Yes.
So it's a great profession to be in. So let's go on to a little bit of the lighter side.
Uh-oh, here it comes.
So if we were to hop in your car right now, what's on your playlist?
K-Love is on my playlist right now. I don't know if you've seen that TikTok before where it's the mom dropping the kids off in the morning and they're like, yes, praise Jesus, have a great day at school today. And then when they get out of the car, it's like, you know, other kind of music that turns on. So since I, for so long, was not able to take my kids to school because as principal, you needed to be at work early.
That's
So Rodney took them to school for the longest time. So this is my 3rd year actually being able to drop my kids off
that's awesome.
in the morning at school. So we listen to K-Love every day because I need for them to just hear Jesus before they go to school. I need for them to feel Jesus before they go to school. But if I'm not listening to that, then I am a huge Beyonce fan. I've gone to all of her concerts, every single last one of them. I really wish she would put out more music, but I don't think she is because she's living her best life because she can.
And Darren loves some Beyonce. He really does. I'm just saying.
Well, you know, Homecoming to me wasn't her best though.
Oh, but see, it reminded me of being at school at UAPB, so it was good to me.
Well, so now I will give you some of it, but some of it I just couldn't get into.
Yeah, well.
Not all of it.
There's something wrong with you.
But with Caleb, like, if I was having a bad day, I'd flip Caleb on. But I love all kinds of music, so I'm switching it around.
So on my Apple Music playlist, I have Elevation Worship, I have Hillsong Worship, I have Maverick City Music. But I am a super old school girl because that's what I grew up listening to. So pop in some Temptations. I have that on my playlist. Some Johnny Taylor's on my playlist. I do listen to current music that we have right now. It's just I don't have time really.
Yeah.
Now if I really need to get work done, like I enjoy listening to Drake. He's a favorite of mine. But I mean, I grew up listening to everything. Like
Yeah,
my
me
dad
too.
was a music connoisseur, so we listened to everything.
Yeah.
I played piano for a while, so I still enjoy classical music too. But if you jumped in my car and you wanted to know what was playing, it's on K-Love right now.
Well, you're probably going to find country for sure, but it could be Sunday service choir. I mean, I can't believe Veronica and Nisi kept that one from me. I mean, I've heard a couple of them, but I mean, of course, my two favorites, Sunshine and what's the other one? Anchored, Souls Anchored.
Souls Anchored. I love
Yeah,
that.
those are two great ones. But I'm kind of like you. I'm old school.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm very eclectic with my music too. But the thing for me, it's got to be loud. It's got to be bumping.
Oh yes.
Sometimes my wife.
So
will
we have
call.
one of those Echo shows 8 in the kitchen, and so like my kids are like, Alexa, play. And Emmy's new thing right now, she loves that song, Thank You Lord. So she wants to play it
yes.
all day long. So she's like, Alexa, play Thank You Lord. You know, so she likes to listen to that. Ethan, he can play video games, but we only let him play certain ones. So he can play Madden, he can play MLB The Show, he can play 2K, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't really let him
Yeah.
play any of the other games, but they have soundtracks on those
Right.
games. So he wants to play the songs that are in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And he likes the soundtrack to Space Jam too because we watched it this summer. But
Right.
we all listen to now. Rodney has a different story. His playlist is way different from mine. But I just try to make sure that I practice what I
Well, the other
teach
thing
them every day.
that I don't get though, my wife, she just doesn't appreciate my voice like I do. You know what I'm saying? I
Poor
totally-
Tanya.
I
Poor
totally don't
Tanya.
get that. So, I mean, we'll be in there and I'll just be singing away, and she's constantly bringing up some subject to talk, so I won't sing. I'm just like, girl, you got to stop. I said, this is my jam right here. And she does it at the worst part. You know what I'm saying? When I'm fixing to really bring
Right.
it home.
Hey,
Take it
listen,
up a
music
notch.
is awesome though, because when I was Donald Westerman's assistant principal, if one of us were having a bad day, we just go on and put some Nelly Country Grammar on. We'd be in there jamming. Kathy Johnson would crack up. It put us in a good mood. I mean,
Yes.
it really does. And
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I just,
It
I
does
love
change your
music.
mood, and I mean, I have to do something to keep my mind at rest, just because
Yeah.
I'm constantly thinking about the next thing,
Yeah.
whether that is work related or my kids, and there are multiple activities that they're in the afternoons, and trying to keep up with Rodney's
Right.
schedule and
Yep.
who's gonna cook dinner, and where we're gonna go, and how we're gonna do this. Da, 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 da. Just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to find something to ground me every day,
Yeah.
Right.
because there's no downtime.
Okay, well, we'll do one more. So, what's the best piece of advice? Well, actually, it's a two-parter. Best piece of advice, worst piece of advice you've ever gotten. You can do them in reverse order if you want to.
I don't know if I can say I have a worst piece of advice.
I couldn't either. I couldn't think of one.
No, I don't know if I've ever gotten a worse piece of advice. I think the best piece of advice for me personally has just come from my parents. They have always encouraged me to do what I want to do, but do it well. So, like I said, growing up, they put me in everything.
Right.
So I really did have a well-rounded childhood experience, you know, leaving outside of Helena and going on family trips and all of those
Right.
different things. You know, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but just to do it well
Right.
and to be good by people.
Right.
Even if people are not being right by you,
That's right.
you do right by people. And that's hard.
That's,
Oh, yeah.
that's hard.
Very hard for me to deal with that as an adult.
Yep.
Because people always are not team you. They will
Right.
clap
Yep.
around you,
Yeah.
but behind the scenes, they
Yeah.
are not
Yeah.
really team you.
Right.
Because sometimes you intimidate people.
Right.
Right.
Maybe just by your presence, maybe
Right.
by what they think you know, or just from the confidence that you have.
Right.
And, you know, people always tell me, man, you are so, like, confident. Where does that come from? And I said, it just comes from me knowing that I know who I am, but I also know whose I am. So,
Right.
like, I know who
Right.
I belong to.
Right.
And my purpose is greater than anything
Right.
that I can do here.
Right.
And
Right.
that kind of was instilled in me in a very,
Sure.
very young age. My father's dad was preacher, and so I grew up going to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
Every Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
But they never pressured baptism,
Right.
Right.
ever.
Right.
So I didn't get formally baptized until I was 21.
Wow.
And my grandfather baptized me at his church. And he said, I've been waiting on this day for 21 years. But my parents never made that a pressure for me. Like, they wanted me to do it. They knew I believed. They knew that I...
It's more about that relationship with the Lord. Yeah.
So I think that's where my confidence comes from, is they allowed me to figure out who I was before pressuring me to do something that I really wasn't committed to doing. My dad passed away 2 years ago, and it probably was one of the most significant moments in my life because I had to grow up really, really quickly. He got diagnosed with lung cancer about 2 weeks before Christmas, before Thanksgiving. Never smoked, never drank, never did anything. And so he had about 109 days, I think that's what I counted, from the time of diagnosis to the time that he passed away. But, you know, my mom never cried one time.
Wow.
She stood by him. She cared for him up until the last moments. And I think that made me stronger as just a person because he never complained throughout that whole time. The whole time. He never, ever, ever complained. So it was always, you know, enjoy what you have and be thankful for what you have. And don't ever let anybody else try to take that away from you. So, you know, everybody has a story.
You're so right.
Sometimes we don't know what that story is from each individual person, which is why we can't assume.
That's right.
Because you never know what somebody is going through. I think each and every one of us have, you know, things that we're battling on a day-to-day basis, but it depends on how you handle it. Somebody can say, well, how do you put a smile on your face and still continue to do? Because I know who I am. And I know whose I am. I know what my purpose is.
Constant reminders to yourself.
But I have to talk to my kids about that too. Because you guys know, being in high schools before, it's hard for that age group. But 11, 12, 13, and then 15, 16, 17, it's just so hard for them.
Very.
And it's going to be much harder for the kids that we're raising right now because what they see every day,
it's tough.
It's just stuff being thrown in their face all day, every day. They have immediate access to everything. And so as parents and as educators, we have to be the barriers for them to know what's appropriate right now and what's not appropriate right now for them to digest. Because right now we're accelerating them too fast. And we are taking their childhood innocence away. And that's not fair to them. So, you know, I know I told you a lot, but sometimes I have to give you context so that you understand kind of where I'm coming from and why I am who I am.
But it's so true. I mean, you know, kids today, there are so many people out there that want to force their ideology on kids as normal or whatever. And like you say, where, you know, growing up, your parents allowed you to be able to make those decisions. And whether it be political, spiritual, emotional, whatever the case might be, as time rocks on, it's like everybody else wants to take what they have and make it yours. And you know, that's true. That is such a struggle.
It is.
I mean,
I see it with some of the, you know, personal friendships that I have with their parenting styles. Some things just aren't meant to have conversations with kids about. We don't have to talk to them about every single thing. Because some things we do need to shelter their ears from.
At least
or their eyes. They don't have to know everything.
That day's coming, but it's...
I know. It is a definite
It doesn't
struggle.
have to be at 10 or...
No.
So,
no. And I mean, I had to grow up a lot when I went to college because my parents did shelter me some. Not a whole lot, but they did shelter me some. I mean, I remember my college roommate, I didn't know her, and by 3 months in, she was ready to move out. And then, like, at 3 o'clock in the morning, boom, 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 boom. Are you in there? And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's trying to come in. What is going on? Like, I thought she was gonna try to beat me up. So she ended up moving out, and I mean, I had to grow up. Really fast. And going to school at UAPB was probably the best experience I could have had. Man, it probably was the best experience I could have had.
Things like that. I mean, you know, at that time in your life, like you say, it's you know, I to a certain degree, I kind of felt the same way. I went to A-State, but again, certain things we were sheltered from, and getting up there. And I mean, you got to make some decisions you've never had to make before. So.
Oh yeah.
You're right. Well, we appreciate you coming in
It's been
today.
so fun.
I'm so glad you came in. I've enjoyed it.
Yes, we need
Yeah.
to do it again.
Yeah,
we
well-
need to
well-
get Rodney down
Yeah.
here and talk
Absolutely.
about maintenance and
Yeah.
transportation.
Absolutely.
I told Taryn today, I said, whatever happens, you've got to be on my side. Because I got bombarded 3-1 the last time.
Yeah, she always said
Nah,
that.
I
But
think
no,
this is good.
you know, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were like, "Man, what's the deal with Dawson?" I was like, "Huh?" They go, "Man, y'all guys are everywhere." And I said, "Look, hey, we're just trying to, honestly, you know, we feel like one of the things that we can do a better job of is getting the word out for our schools,
Yeah.
the great things that they're doing."
Right.
I said, because as much as they do it, they still don't have time to get all that they are doing out there.
No.
I said,
That's right.
we could do this 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and you still wouldn't get all the great things that our schools are doing. And I said, I know people think I'm biased because I say this all the time, but I truly believe, you know, the school districts that we have in the Dawson Co-op are the best schools in the state of Arkansas. And we're very blessed to have the schools that we do
Very.
on lots of levels.
Yes,
And
I
you
agree
know,
with that.
and you know, and what makes that happen and what makes them the best for sure, it's not the equipment, it's not the technology, it's the people.
Yes.
They have hearts for kids. You
Yep.
don't find that everywhere, I
No,
promise.
people, not programs.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well,
Every
thank
time.
you for coming in.
No, thank you.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming.
I feel like I told y'all my whole
Yeah,
story.
we love it. We get that's the point, to get to know everybody.
Well, we'll catch up with everybody next time. Again, this is a wrap with, wrapping up. Candace says I can't put a number on the episodes because I get all wrapped up and say the wrong one. But we'll close out this session. And how about that of Spilling the Tea from Studio D.